Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. Good afternoon, folks. Morning, whatever it is, wherever you are. We're just glad you're with us. Whether you stumbled on our podcast or connected intentionally, we think you may be just where the next right step of your recovery is about to happen. Faith in your recovery may be exactly the thing you need. Are you tired of the fight, fed up with the struggle, done lying to yourself about, well, the next time? Hold on. We don't believe you've come this far to only come this far. Faith in your recovery has become a true source of help and hope to those battling substance use disorder / addiction. Through strugglers who were once forgotten, cast out, discarded, and are now proving to each other and everyone else that recovery is possible, we take off our hats. We salute you and say thanks for staying in the battle, where negativity, desperation, hopelessness once lived. There's now a path to a healthy and successful future. On this episode, you're going to hear from a struggler that rose from the ashes, the lies, the guilt, that sense of worthlessness, to a point in recovery where they're now touching, changing, and saving lives. Folks, thanks for tuning in. Hold on, listen closely. We've got good stuff for you. Now, I want to welcome today's recovery rock star, Heather Anderson. Welcome, Heather.
Thank you, Randy. Hi.
Great to have you. We look forward to what we're going to learn from you, what you're going to share, hearing your story and those difficulties, but ending up with that victory that you have. Now, introduce yourself to the folks. Just explain Heather at this moment in your life to these folks who may not know you.
Well, today I'm a mother. I'm a grandmother. I am the operations manager at Turning Point Madison County.
Tell the folks what Turning Point Madison County is about.
So here at Turning Point Madison County, we are a team of recovery coaches, kind of a resource hub for people suffering with addictions and mental illness. For me, it's just being that person in the community that can give other people hope.
Wow. What a role that fills and what a need exists. I wish we were at a point where we didn't need folks doing that, but you and I both know that's not the case yet. We'd love to see it someday. Don't know if we'll get there, but we're going to keep trying, aren't we?
Yes.
Yeah, tell them a little more about you, some of your interests, hobbies, what you like to do with extra time.
Well, I love spending time with my 2 grandchildren. I have a 2-year-old grandson and a 3-month-old granddaughter.
Wow, that's that has to be an experience. I remember back when they were that age, okay? Yes. Yeah, that's a good thing. So you say that you work and live here in Madison County, yes?
I do, yes.
Okay. Has this been home forever?
For most of my life, yes. At a young age, I lived in Oklahoma City. From an infant to about 7, I think.
Do you have many memories of Oklahoma City?
Not a lot, no.
Have you had a chance to go back there?
I have not.
Do you have that desire?
Maybe someday. I never really thought about it, honestly.
It's not necessarily on the bucket list, but a possibility.
It's not, yes.
All right, okay. So that was your life up to the age of 7. Move us forward. So it sounds like maybe you left Oklahoma City at the age of 7. Then did you come here to Madison County at that time?
Yes, we moved back to Madison County. My parents were very young when they had me. So that was a little bit of a struggle, just learning how to be an adult and growing up, with not very much money, I guess.
Yeah, sure.
So we moved to Anderson, and I went to Valley Grove Elementary School and Highland High School. I didn't really do any extracurricular activities in school, but I played softball as a child.
Okay, all right. So, what were you like in high school? How would your friends, classmates, teachers, how would they have described you? What would they have said if I'd have asked them about Heather?
Probably that I'm a very quiet person.
Yeah.
I'm a very shy person until you get to know me.
Uh-huh.
So being in this setting is kind of, makes me anxious.
Yeah, well, it's just you, me, and Eric, but hopefully there's a lot of people listening in, all right? But rest assured, they're there because they want to be and because they want to hear what you have to give to them. When did your issues start, Heather, your true life challenges? What age were you, give or take? Tell us about that.
Well, as I said, I grew up with young parents. One of my parents was an addict and one was not. So I remember, the struggles of that. Addiction is a family disease. I remember my grandfather and, my dad arguing and, things like that when I was younger. I probably did not pick up until I was about 13. It was the first time I ever tried any substances.
What was that?
It was marijuana.
Marijuana.
Yes.
Had somebody offered that to you? Had you gone somewhere to make that happen? How did it come about?
Well, I guess I just saw it. It was available, and I saw it. A neighbor kid also was doing it, and so we just kind of got together and was like, hey, let's try this.
Yeah, okay, I got that. I'm sure that's the way it happens lots of times, all right? Do you recall what that experience was like?
I didn't like it at all. I just was like, this is boring. It didn't really make me feel any different. We had snuck out in the middle of the night, so I was tired, and I was just like, well, this isn't what it was cracked up to be. And just went home and went to bed.
All right.
But it didn't keep me from trying it again.
Why do you think that was? Because everybody and everything was telling you it should have done more for you than what it did, and you were still hunting for that, perhaps?
Right. And I was just trying to fit in. I feel like in those early stages, I just wanted to belong somewhere or feel that I was significant,
Heather, I wish I had a dime for every time I've heard someone in your seat say that. I did it to fit in. I wanted to be a part of the group. I just wanted to be accepted. I'd be off somewhere in warm weather with my feet in the sand, okay? But that's the story of a lot of folks. So how long did you keep going with the marijuana?
For a lot of years, we also got into the parents' alcohol and drank as well. And we did that for many years. I started doing prescription pills when I was about 15 or 16. I had tried to commit suicide when I was 15 years old. And so when I went to the doctor, they had put me on prescription Xanax, and it just, I was already dabbling in substances, so I didn't take them the way I was supposed to, and it just progressed.
It became more abuse than medical.
Yes.
Yes. Can I go ahead and ask about that suicide attempt? Do you know today what the root of that was?
Well, honestly, I was dating a guy that was older than me, and he ended up seeing somebody else. And I think it was an attention seeking thing more than anything. I didn't want to die, but I wanted to be noticed.
Okay. Thank you for that honesty. Folks, we strive to do our best to be raw and real here on our Faith in Your Recovery podcast. We want to talk about all things recovery, those dark moments, and then those moments of victory. So you just got done sharing with us. It started with marijuana, then it was alcohol, and then the pills. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Take us forward from there, how all of those played together and what the next steps were.
Well, it stayed that way for a long time, just the prescription pills and the alcohol. Marijuana was here and there. I ended up getting pregnant and married at 18. I had my daughter when I was 19. So I did not, I quit doing drugs and drinking when I was pregnant, but as soon as I had her, I started right back where I was again. I was in a mentally and emotionally abusive relationship that turned to physical in later years. I was with my first husband for about 10 years.
Okay. So you've been in and out of a lot of things, not just the drugs, but the struggles and the challenges to want to face tomorrow, it sounds like.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. That divorce came about at approximately what age?
We got divorced when, I don't exactly remember.
Okay, that's all right.
Because we ended up having 2 children. Okay. So, he, like I said, there was a lot of mental, emotional, and then physical abuse in the marriage. And I believe that when I got pregnant, I just thought, I'm supposed to marry him. This is how it's supposed to be. So that's what I did. But
did that abuse, those struggles, did they drive you back toward any kind of ideations or thoughts of suicide at that time that you recall?
No. Once I had my daughter, I don't think that ever crossed my mind.
You had somebody to live for. You had a purpose. You did belong. You belonged as mom, right?
Yes.
So it gave you that identity at that time.
Yes.
That makes sense to me. Okay, take us forward from there.
Okay. So I guess a really hard time for me was when my best friend committed suicide. And that kind of fueled my addiction. She had called me, my first husband and I, we were very on again, off again. And she had called me one night and we were on again. So I had put that phone call off, and I got a call later that night that she had hung herself. And I blamed myself for that for a very long time. And my way to be out of reality or to numb the pain was to get high or drunk. And so that's what I did. My first husband and I, like I said, we had a very abusive relationship. So eventually we ended up splitting up. I had started going to jail. He had started going to jail. And when I was pregnant with my second daughter, the abuse had gotten physical, and he ended up going to prison for a little bit of time for domestic violence.
What were the causes for those initial incarcerations?
For myself, mostly drinking and driving. I had a lot of drinking and driving.
So back to the addiction issue again.
Yes, absolutely. All of my, every time I went to jail or prison in later years was always from my addiction.
Yeah. Our local sheriff in Jay County, Indiana, told me not too long ago that 92 to 94% of his inmates are in the jail related to addiction, one way or the other. Not necessarily drug charges, but theft to pay for those drugs or whatever the case might be. So that has a lot of fingers and tentacles that reaches out, doesn't it?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. Back to your friend and that guilt that you felt, it had to be kind of if I'd have just answered the phone, I might have made a difference. Is that accurate?
Yes, it is. And I felt like that for many, many years.
Do you know how you were able to let go of that?
Eventually, it was just starting my own healing process and getting clean. So I've been clean for about 5.5 years now.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I've dealt with a lot of those issues just in the last 5.5 years, being able to forgive myself and understand that it was not my fault.
Yeah. For whatever it's worth to you, my mother, when I was 23, took her life. She took my car that morning. I worked with my dad, and she asked to use my car, which she had never done before. And she asked to use my car. She drove it to a train track and stepped out in front of the train that she had been scheduling for a number of days. And I remember the guilt that I carried with that, the anger, everything that went with it. It was almost 8 years to the day. And then I came to a realization that I was mad at her more than I was blaming me, and I never allowed myself to verbalize that, okay? It just didn't seem right.
That makes sense.
Yeah, when you've been there, you get an idea on some of that, okay? All right, so you lost your friend. That sent you back into that darkness, the using of the drugs, the alcohol. You went to jail a couple of times over the alcohol. Your husband ended up going to prison. Correct me if I'm wrong, over the abuse, yes?
Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned, too, that you ended up having some prison time. Tell us a little about that, please.
Yeah, so I ended up going to prison the first time in 2008. My disease just progressed through the years, lots of toxic relationships, and I was put into the drug court program in 2007, and I was pregnant at the time, so I was not using. That's one thing that I can always say that I'm proud of myself for. Every time I got pregnant, I didn't use during my pregnancy.
Yes.
I just don't know why it couldn't continue after that.
Got that. Well, you had such a strong purpose then and reason, but go ahead, please.
Yes. So after my son was born, I pretty much picked up right where I left off, even though I was in drug court, and I ended up going to prison for the first time when my youngest is a son, and he was 4 months old.
How long were you incarcerated at that time?
That time I was incarcerated for a year.
Okay. Did you learn anything from that other than what not to do, which you knew before you went in? But yeah.
When I look back on it today, I didn't learn very much that first time.
Okay.
I did not look at my own issues. I did not recognize, that I needed some healing of my own. And I ended up going to prison 2 more times after that time.
So that first time, the lessons didn't come because you weren't ready to learn. You were still thinking with that mind that got you in there.
Yes.
Okay. So you say you went 2 more times after that. Give us that scenario, please.
So continued toxic relationships. And the second time I was in prison just for a very brief time, and that was for, I don't remember the specific charges, but it basically was for not complying with probation or what the courts had requested.
Often the case.
Yes, requested from me. And I was like I said, I was there maybe 6 months, and I definitely did not learn anything that time at all. And my disease continued to progress over the years. The last time I went to prison, I was given 21 years.
What was that for? What were those charges?
Those were dealing charges.
Okay.
I got a level 2 dealing charge.
How long did you actually spend incarcerated?
I did about 3.5 years. And that time, I just completely changed my mind. I was very, at the time of my arrest, I was very broken. I was doing harder drugs. I was doing methamphetamines. I was shooting up. And I think that it was because subconsciously I was wanting to die. I was wanting to kill myself.
Back to that earlier suicide attempt, just in a slower, not as direct a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So my math says you did about 5 years in prison total. Is that pretty close? 3.5 a year, 6 months. Yeah.
About that. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What was the lights on moment that third time to where you said, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. I'm done with this.
Well, I'd already lost, all my kids, and my girls. I was not a part of their childhood growing up.
Did they go into the system, foster care, or did your parents?
No, they went to live with their dad.
Okay.
Yes. So, I had missed out on a lot with them. And, I don't know exactly the moment when I was sitting in jail and knew that I was facing 30, 40, 50 years for all of the charges that I
can't
had.
Imagine that, giving that any thought, okay, let alone facing it. Please go ahead.
Yes. I fell to my knees. I fell to my knees and I asked God for help.
Had you done that before? Did you have any recognizable chosen connection with God? I know he had a connection with you, but I'm asking you, did you feel a connection with him prior to that?
At a very young age, I was very, very active in church, went with my grandma a lot, went to church camp and all those types of fun things you do as a kid. And
hooray for grandmas.
Yes. So I remember going to church, but I don't think that I ever really grasped who God was at that young age.
I get that. I remember back to the scripture that says, train up a child in the way they should go, and they'll return unto it. That may not be a direct, absolute quote, but it's close,
Yes.
okay? And you're living proof of that. So you fell to your knees. You said, God, I need your help. Go ahead.
I knew that something had to change, and it had to be me, So I begged, I cried, and I asked for help. And then that day I got onto the kiosk and I wrote the chaplain and asked him for a Bible and asked him to talk to him. And the next day there was a chaplain walking through handing out Bibles, and I stopped him, and I'll never forget it. His eyes were so warm and loving, and I felt like I knew him my whole life. And his name was Pastor Sean. And I asked him if he had a Bible for me, and he said, "You're Heather, right?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I don't have a Bible for you, but I ordered one for you." And it will be here tomorrow. And I also signed you up for Celebrate Recovery. And so I was super excited about that. The next day, I got a brand new Celebrate Recovery Bible and went to Celebrate Recovery that next week. And then I didn't see Pastor Sean anymore. And so I was going to Celebrate Recovery. And so I asked the ladies there, I was like, so where's Pastor Sean? I want to thank him for this Bible because it really changed my life, And they were like, well, Pastor Sean had to move on. His work here was done. And nobody that I've ever talked to remembers Pastor Sean being there. And I just felt like it was God sending his angel to tell me, I hear your prayers. He told me, choose life or death.
He was your angel that moment.
Yes.
There's no doubt in my mind. I'm getting spirit chills and almost got tears hearing you say that, okay? That moment, nobody else experienced him like you did. I'm going to guess at that moment, nobody else needed him like you did.
Yes.
God's timing's perfect.
It is.
Yeah.
And that's when it changed for me. That's when it changed. Like, I am not going to live this way anymore. I'm not going to die. I'm going to change my life. And from that moment on, I spent a year in jail waiting to be sentenced before I went to prison. And, I just went to Celebrate Recovery, went to church, stayed in my Bible, and just tried to change my mindset.
And so I'm going to try to get this right. Correct me if you need to. You were there in jail with your Bible, Celebrate Recovery, the church services for about a year waiting on your sentencing. You got your sentencing, and that sent you off to prison, correct?
Yes.
Okay. How did you carry your faith with you? How did you play it out during that time? What were your experiences?
Well, again, my mindset was, I have to work for this. I have to put in the action. And so when I got to prison, even though I wasn't able to take my Celebrate Recovery Bible with me because you can't take things with you to prison, I was able to get some addresses before I went, and I got a Life Recovery Bible when I was in prison. And I love the Celebrate Recovery Bible, but the Life Recovery Bible is really what changed my life. It just spoke to me in a way that no Bible ever has, which is kind of funny because they all say the same thing.
Well, they do, but we've got our different versions with the KJV, the RSV, the NIV, the NLT, the Message, and that keeps going and going. And I had a friend one time who belonged to a church that was very much the King James Version, or it didn't count. He had the attitude, the most important version of the Bible is the one you'll read. And I agree with that.
Yes.
I understand there are some nuances and changes. We can always go back to that KJV or whatever, but personally, I'm a New International Version guy, okay? That's where I find my best understanding. I'll often use others to study with, to get other words on. But there you are. You're working through your faith. How long again were you in prison at that time? About 3.5 years?
Yes.
Yeah. How did that compare to your other experiences? And I know it was considerably longer. Was it an everyday, it seemed to drag out? Or with this relationship, did that change your life enough that it moved a little faster?
It was the easiest time that I ever did, honestly. I just really focused on building my relationship with God and trying to change my mindset. When I got there, I was accepted into the RWI, which is Recovery While Incarcerated program, pretty much immediately. They had just changed some of the ways that they do things, and you weren't on a waiting list according to your out date anymore. You are just on the waiting list from when you signed up.
Who's next?
Yes.
Yes.
And so I was blessed in that way because I would have had to wait a very long time to get into the class if it was the old way.
Okay.
So I got in there immediately, and then I just started doing everything that I just utilized every program that they had in the prison. So codependency classes, spirituality classes, just anything that they could offer me that was self-help, I would do.
You were sponge and ready to absorb, yes?
Yes.
I'm going to ask you a question here, and I understand if you don't answer. And if you're not comfortable, please don't. Can I ask you the name of where you were?
I was at Rockville.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So much of what you were saying made me think of Madison, Indiana, and the facility there because I've heard similar stories. I just haven't dealt with a lot of folks who've been at Rockville and told me this very much the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
All right.
I actually I've been to Madison as well. The second time I went to prison, I was in Madison.
Uh-huh.
And it's a much easier place to be.
That's kind of what I've heard.
Yes, but I think that, as God was working on me, my mind was more at ease and I was more at peace. So it was okay. I just accepted the situation for what it was at the moment.
Okay. When you got out, what were your relationships when you got back home? Were your mom and dad still alive?
Yes, both of my parents are still alive.
Were
yes.
they a support to you at that time? Was it more hands-off? Where was the relationship with them?
When I got out of prison, they were very supportive. But when I was in jail waiting to go to prison, they practiced that tough love very much. I had just kept doing repeating the cycle over and over again. I didn't raise my girls. I wasn't honest. I wasn't somebody that they could count on.
Yeah, get that. Plus, I would think as they're waiting on you to be sentenced, the pain they were experiencing, if it's hands off, I'm not as close, I'm not going to hurt as much. And I can get that if that was where they were at, okay?
Right.
Yeah. So your girls, while you were in prison, did you hear anything from them? Were there contacts? What was your relationship?
I was able to speak to them like when they were at my mom's house. When they weren't with me, they still went to my mom's house every week on Wednesdays to just have dinner and be with my mom. My sister kind of really stepped up into that mom role that I was absent of.
Is she younger or older than you?
She's younger.
She's younger.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you got out, what about the relationship then?
When I got out, my oldest, so my girls are adults. So my oldest was, I'm trying to think.
Ballpark it.
Yeah, it seems so long ago, but it really wasn't, But I spoke to them while I was in prison. And so when I got out, I was put into the reentry program, the problem solving courts program in Madison County. And so I was held accountable for a lot of things. And my family saw that I had changed while I was there. And so they were very supportive and accepting. I think, my youngest daughter, which is my middle child, she was still leery, and she still is sometimes today,
Yeah. So where is the relationship today? 3 kids, yes?
Yes, 3.
Yeah.
So
where is the relationship?
23, 19, and 14.
Okay. Where is that relationship now?
It's really good now. I speak to my kid. Well, my son lives with me now,
Okay.
which, he
14.
didn't before. Yes, my 14-year-old lives with me. My oldest daughter has my 2-year-old grandson, and we are very close. And I see my grandson multiple times a week, or he stays all night weekly. So we have a good bond now, and she trusts me today.
That's big. Mm-hmm. That's big. The 14-year-old, I've got to ask you, what are his thoughts, feelings? Does he address the issue of your past, the addictions, the incarceration, or are you guys still kind of, we can talk about it, but we don't have to?
Well, I am not opposed to talking about anything and being honest about anything that has happened in my life. The 14-year-old, he was young, and so I may have been there, but I wasn't present.
Gotcha.
So he will bring things up, definitely, but I'm open to talk about whatever they want to talk about.
So you wait kind of for them to ask the question and you jump in with an answer and experience.
Yes.
Yeah, that's healthy. That's good. So tell us where you are today, what life looks like. You touched on it a little bit ago, being a peer recovery coach. Tell the folks how you got there. Tell them what a peer recovery coach does and why it's important to you to have the position you have.
Well, let's see. So I graduated the Problem Solving Courts program, and I know that it was important for me to stay connected, to stay connected to like-minded people that will hold me accountable and to keep myself accountable. So I'm actually one of the first graduates to be hired by Problem Solving Courts. So I also facilitate the women's group for Problem Solving Courts. So I take a lot of pride in that.
You should, yes.
And I have a good relationship with everybody in Problem Solving Courts. So I just love that. And then I was...
Let me interrupt one
Okay.
moment. I've got to ask you. It's got to be kind of the shoes on the other foot in the sense of now you're working with the courts instead of facing the courts.
Yes.
That's got to, that shows the change.
It
Yes.
seems unreal a lot of the
I can't imagine
times.
for you. Okay, yeah. You can walk in feeling okay and walk out feeling okay, not is the hammer going to fall?
Yes,
So, yeah.
yes.
All right, go back to that, please.
So before this job, I was assistant manager at a meat market in Fishers. So, and I knew that I wanted to work with addicts. That's been a passion of mine, just to give back and hopefully help somebody not go through the same things that I did by sharing my experience, strength, and hope. And this job just kind of fell in my lap. I had heard about Turning Point and was interested, but I didn't know much about it. And then one day I was at a meeting with one of my coworkers now, and I just I'm a very shy person until you get to know me. So I was like, okay, if I don't start networking and put myself out there, I'm going to stay stuck and stagnant where I'm at. So I just started a conversation with him. I was like, so you work at Turning Point, right? Although I knew he did. And we just got to talking, and he called me a couple weeks later, and he was like, hey, great news. Why don't you come in and talk to my boss? And I was like, okay. And so I came in and spoke with Jason, and I just knew that this was the place for me. I felt purposeful, and I love being a recovery coach. I love helping people and, giving them resources and kind of guiding them in ways that will help improve their lifestyle.
And that improves everybody's life when we improve someone else's, okay? Pardon this illustration, and I know it was not relational with the friend you were talking about, but it sounds like job flirting, not with the individual male-female kind of flirting, but I'm going to flirt with your job here. Maybe I can get over there kind of thing.
That's
Okay.
funny. Yes, I like that.
Yeah, I
That's
hope
funny.
that came out okay, folks. Believe
It did
me.
to me.
All right. I mean the best by it. Okay. It's just that idea, but you obviously had the package they were hunting for, those skills. How long have you been doing this?
I have been here since October.
Since October. So
Yes.
let's see. That's there's three,
Well over
4,
3
5.
months.
Yeah. Wow. Hooray. Is it what you thought it would be? I know there are strange moments, but is this what you expected?
Yes and no, I guess. So I got offered the operations manager position, and I was just
What
flabbergasted.
does that mean? Operations. First off, let's back up. Tell them what a peer recovery coach does.
So a peer recovery coach, here we just provide connections and resources to people who are suffering or in a state of crisis. Just walking beside them and helping them along the way.
Okay. Now go ahead and tell them what was that proper title?
Operations manager.
That's what I almost said. Go ahead and tell them the role of the operations manager.
So my role is just to manage the team and, just to make sure that procedures and policies are in order and that we're giving the best support and that we can to the community.
So you're kind of a coach of the coaches.
Yeah.
Awesome. Hooray for you, number one, for the progress, the healing, and now giving back. And that's part of our recovery, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Finding
Yes.
a way to give back, to stay involved. Heather, the name of our podcast is Faith in Your Recovery. You've openly shared of your relationship with God. What does the title Faith in Your Recovery mean to you?
I guess having faith in myself, and it took a long time for me to get there, for me to find my self-worth and my self-confidence and just to have faith and trust in myself like I do the Lord, and it took me building a relationship with him and finding out who I was in his eyes for me to get there.
Amen to that. I'm picturing you finding faith in him, knowing he can be trusted. You go through this abuse, you went through so many other things. What can I trust? You find out there is somebody. And that encourages you then to start trusting in yourself. And here you are. Is there anything you'd like to say to wrap this up, Heather, to folks out there who may be struggling or have a child incarcerated is there anything you'd like to say?
Well, if you're struggling, just reach out, and that's the hardest part to do is to ask for help. It was for me, at least, I thought that I could do everything myself. And it's that connection with other people that helps me heal.
And I've heard that throughout your story here. Thank you. We so appreciate your honesty, opening up, and I hope it's been as good for you as I'm sure it's going to be for our listeners.
Thank you for having me, Randy.
Yeah. Folks, a Faith in Your Recovery, we believe the process, the journey, the recovery, it's like a rainbow. You cannot witness a rainbow without sharing it with someone else. Rainbows aren't secrets. We also believe you can't experience recovery without telling others. Recovery should never be a secret. Thanks for tuning in, listening. Go ahead, subscribe, like, and share. That'd be a great way to support us. God bless. Take care. Amen.